Blessed are those who do not follow the counsel of the wicked, or linger in the way of the sinners, or sit down among those who mock. But their delight is in the law of God, and on that law they meditate day and night. They are like trees planted beside streams of water, yielding their fruit due to season. Their leaves do not wither, and whatever they produce shall prosper. As for the wicked, it is so with them, but they are like the chaff driven away by the wind. Therefore the wicked not be able to stand when judgment comes, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For God watches over the way of the righteous, and the way of the wicked will perish. From Jeremiah 17. Thus says our God, cursed are those who trust in mere mortals, and make mere flesh their strength, whose hearts turn away from God. They shall be like a shrub in the desert, and shall not see when relief comes. They shall live in the parched places of the wilderness, in uninhabited salt land. Blessed are those who trust in God, whose trust is God. They shall be like a tree planted by water, sending out its roots by the stream. It shall not fear when heat comes, and its leaves shall stay green. In the year of drought, it is not anxious, and it does not cease to bear fruit. The heart can be cunning. It is easy to fool ourselves. Who can understand how the heart works? God will probe the heart and discern hidden motives, to give everyone what they deserve, the consequences of their deeds. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.
Well, it was right about now, 2 full years ago, when the world began to grapple with a mysterious coronavirus that was making a lot of people sick. And then suddenly, things came to a standstill. Sort of. In many ways, it's been 2 years of not doing things and waiting, canceling plans, placing things on hold. Only not really, because some things have happened over these 2 years too. Lots of things, really. Some things that have been life-changing and death-dealing, some of which have been related to the pandemic, and lots not, except in how we cope with them. Those doing triage are barely hanging on. And there has been much to do to adapt to the guidelines and the changes and new ways of living in a pandemic world. And keeping up with the changes has been exhausting for everyone, whether you're feeling at a loss for things to do or run off your feet. And it's not just the shift in information, as scientists and medical professionals have learned more about this mysterious virus, but also the political shifts and the philosophical shifts, so that it is nearly impossible to keep up with the rules at any given time. We experience metaphorical whiplash as we try. Several times, for example, I've been part of meetings at the church on a Wednesday evening where we've thought we've attended to whatever options might appear, only to discover by a Friday press conference a day and a half later that we guessed totally wrong. Like, this week. It feels like all areas of our lives have been impacted. Think about the weather. Last summer's drought, this winter's snow. It's minus 33. No, it's plus 4. No, it's a blizzard. Well, that was this week. This feeling of being trapped in a constant state of flux is wearying, no doubt. We have witnessed how some have exhibited their frustration. At different times through the pandemic, people have taken to the streets to express their dissatisfaction with the state of things. We have also seen how some have exploited widespread feelings of frustration in order to justify bad behavior, to destabilize community, to exhibit hate, which is not okay. So, in the midst of such frustration, how do we find a way to survive? No, thrive. How can we, as the scripture says, flourish during the drought? There is temptation, I think, to believe that we just need to get rid of the drought, the thing that has been plaguing us for 2 years, and that we have the power to do so. That's the struggle I see the prophet and the psalmist struggling with. The context of the passage from Jeremiah involves the strategy of Judah's leaders to form an alliance with Egypt to defeat the Babylonians, who are their enemy. And that is going to fix everything. Let's get rid of the Babylonians and our problem will be solved. And Jeremiah cautions his people not to trust in their military might to get rid of their trouble, but to trust in God through their trouble. Because it's not simple, it's not a very popular message. So the people don't really like to listen to Jeremiah, and as it turns out, they go another direction. And their attempt to fight back prompted the Babylonians to tighten their grip, eventually destroying the city and the temple and sending the Judeans, including Jeremiah, into many years of exile. I think we see a similar struggle in the psalm. How do we get rid of our trouble, says the psalmist, surrounded as we are by wickedness, mocking, sin? And at first glance in this passage, it appears that there's a clear separation between that which is wicked and that which is righteous. Those that are wicked are living a life that leads to destruction, and those that are righteous are leading lives that lead to blessing, lived under the watchful eye of God. And it sounds at first like the psalm is advocating not only name-calling, but also a clear drawing of lines between them and us. However, we have created those categories of them and us. So just get rid of the wicked, and we'll be good. Only, when we look at that psalm just a little bit closer, we discover that discerning who is wicked and who is righteous is not as easy as we thought. In fact, all of us, no doubt, could find ways that we have lined up with the wicked. But in good news, the psalm ends not by categorizing people, but defining pathways. It's not the wicked that must perish, it's the way of the wicked that must perish. It is the way of the righteous that is guarded by God, not the righteous, whoever they are. It's as if this psalm is trying to provide some practical advice about how to be good, even when it feels like evil is closing in on you. I was thinking about that, and I was reminded of a quote by Robert Hayden. It says this: "We must not be frightened nor cajoled into accepting evil as deliverance from evil. We must go on struggling to be human, though monsters of abstractions police and threaten us." It's about how to respond when the world comes crashing down on you, and you don't really know how to cope. Are you going to lash out at others and at the world? Are you going to try and hurt back those who have hurt you? Are you going to just give up? Or will you trust God to help you find a way through? Can you trust God to help you discern what is righteous and what is wicked so that you can choose against the wrong? Will you trust God to help you trust people who can help you work for the kind of change that will allow you to flourish and bear fruit when it really seems impossible? For the psalm says, those who trust in God will make it. Liz Lyles Wagner told this story. "One night, I walked in from the store with my arms full and a brand new candle in my bag. And as I struggled to get it all on the counter, one bag dropped and I heard the glass break. My brand new candle was ruined as the glass around it shattered. I was so frustrated, and I was just ready to throw the whole thing away. But my spouse refused to let me do that. "It will still light," he said. "It will still serve its purpose." Well, immediately I began to argue back. "It's broken, it's ugly, glass is everywhere, it's not the same." So I walked away. And when I came back, he had put the candle on the counter and lit the wick. And my heart was immediately drawn to the light. How often do we do this in our own lives with others? Things don't turn out the way we want them to. Plans fail, dreams shatter, goals hit the floor, people break our hearts. And we're ready to throw the whole darn thing in the trash, even though it can still light, still shine, still bring the fragrance of goodness. It just may not be pretty or in the package that we wanted or imagined. This indeed reminds me of both Jeremiah and the Psalm. It says if people find their strength in God, they can be like the tree that can endure the heat and the drought because the roots know where to find their water. Those who trust will not stop bearing fruit. Interestingly, a side note, the verb here can also be translated as depart or turn away, as in, not only will they not stop making fruit, they will not turn away from making fruit. And why do I find that interesting? Well, because when things get difficult, we have this very human habit of focusing in on our own wants and our own needs and our own desires. And when we feel sorry for ourselves, when, as Jeremiah says, the cunning and hidden motives of the heart take hold, we stop worrying about what other people are facing or dealing with and wanting and needing. We want to throw out the entire candle. But those who trust in God will not turn away from producing the fruits of love, even when it feels like we don't have the right conditions for it. And so they will continue to ask forgiveness for their mistakes, and they will take responsibility for changing what they can change instead of making everything somebody else's fault or somebody else's problem. They will reach out and care for their neighbor because they can. They will pay attention to how their actions impact the people around them because it is the right thing to do. They will let the goodness and the purpose and the light shine through all of the broken and cut edges of life. But they can only do that if they're being nourished in their roots, in the roots of their being. They can only do that if they understand that our self-made, self-help, I can fix it if I work hard enough attitude does not sustain us when the bottom falls out. That our thriving future is not solely dependent on our efforts and our ingenuity alone. Ask every top-ranked, skilled athlete who did not win the medal that they were expecting to win in Beijing this week. Many times, life is not about deserving or not deserving, but simply navigating a path in a complex and messy world where there's much we don't control and even more space for redemption. This is a world in which we need to exercise our hearts. Parker Palmer talks about that. He says that under stress, an unexercised heart will explode in frustration or fury. If the situation is especially tense, that exploding heart may be hurled like a fragment grenade toward the source of its pain. But a heart that has been consistently exercised through conscious engagement with suffering is more likely to break open instead of apart. Such a heart has learned how to flex, to hold tension in a way that expands its capacity for suffering and also for joy. I think this is the tension in which we have been living, and we continue to live. So we need to exercise our hearts. How do you do that? How do you tap into sources of strength and compassion? How do you make sure that you are being well watered in a world that is certainly going to tell you that you can live without it? What is going to sustain you and our world through the coming hours and days and weeks? Following God's way can take many paths. May God guide and guard the path we follow. Amen.